Welcome to Chronically Jill, the podcast where I, Jillian Hagen, also known as the Fibro Rebel Online, will tell you all about my life with chronic illnesses, bring you more fun facts about fibromyalgia, and tell you the story of someone's day-to-day life with chronic illnesses. My pronouns are she, her. This is an independent podcast, which I am recording in my kitchen. We have a lot of animals and kids, so there will occasionally be noises in the background. And you're a jerk. This podcast absolutely will contain explicit language, so please be forewarned. And as this is an independent podcast, I would love it if you supported me on Patreon or Acast. For as little as $2 a month, you can get access to early episodes, ad-free content, merch, and more. And if that's not something you're interested in, that's absolutely okay. I'm thankful for your support in just listening, sharing, and subscribing wherever you listen to your podcasts. Let's get on with the fun facts about fibro. Now, this isn't about fibro again, but it is about something that so many of us who have fibro deal with. Chronic fatigue syndrome, or CFS as we call it, as we will be calling it, quite often on this podcast, is a disorder that causes extreme fatigue lasting for at least 6 months. Any activity, physical or mental, worsens the fatigue, which doesn't improve with rest. Symptoms of CFS include sleep that isn't refreshing, memory issues, and dizziness that tends to worsen while standing. This condition is also known as ME, or myalgic, I'm going to get this so wrong, encephalomyelitis, encephalomyelitis, I think. So myalgic encephalomyelitis. I am 100% sure that I am wrong there. Please call me on it if I am. Sometimes you will see it called ME/CFS, and they have also recently proposed a new term, which is systemic exertional intolerance disease, or SEID. Experts aren't sure what causes CFS, although there are many theories. Psychological stress or viral infections are a couple of them. Testing for chronic fatigue is done by process of elimination, since there is no direct testing available. Doctors will test for other conditions that have similar presentations, and then when they all come back negative, they will give a diagnosis of CFS. And I think all of us with fibro know all about the process of elimination diagnosis all too well, and just how frustrating it is. Symptoms of CFS include, see if they sound familiar to you fibromyalgia sufferers, fatigue, problems with memory or concentration, sore throat, headaches, enlarged lymph nodes on your neck or armpits, unexplained muscle or joint pain, dizziness that worsens with moving from laying down or sitting to standing, unrefreshed sleep, extreme exhaustion after physical or mental exercise. Anyone recognize these symptoms? Yeah, same. They're basically the same as fibro and a few other things. I've been diagnosed with both, so I guess that makes sense. There are so many things that share symptoms, which is why diagnoses can be so difficult to come by sometimes. Also, why it can change. Just another reason for the trolls out there to tell us how our pain isn't real. Dicks. There aren't any direct treatments for CFS because, of course, there isn't. We can only manage our symptoms, and as we all know, that isn't exactly the easiest thing in the world. Here's a list of all the things that the internet suggests for CFS. Medication, antidepressants, they help with mental health symptoms and can help take care of some of the sleep issues. Things like ibuprofen and naproxen can help with pain symptoms. Therapy can help with CFS. Apparently, therapy can help you improve your daily activities and general lifestyle changes to help with fatigue. Self-care, things like yoga? Not Yoda, although Yoda could probably help too. But things like yoga and meditation, limiting caffeine, I could never, creating a sleep routine, and learning to manage stress can all be useful tools in helping one live with CFS. Nutrition, eating lots of fruits and veggies, lean meats and low-fat dairy products will help. Eating anything processed is bad. And if you're the kind of person who can actually stick to any sort of elimination diet, all the power to you. I can't. I've tried. I fail. I still feel just as crappy, but I'm miserable because I just love food. The fatigue is one of the worst things that I deal with. It feels all-encompassing, like you will never live a full life again. And we all will, but we have to make changes to what a full life actually means for us. We are always going to feel a little bit sick and a little bit tired. Certain days are going to be easy to ignore all of that stuff and live. Some days are going to need a little more experimentation to figure out how to do stuff. Basically, just do your best, and that's going to change a lot. I'm going to take a little break, and we will be back with my interview with Savannah. So hi, welcome, Savannah.
Hi, I'm glad to be here.
Good. I'm glad you're here. How are you doing today?
As far as chronically ill days go, it's actually a pretty decent one.
That's good.
So
tell me about your chronic illnesses. What do you got going on?
All right, it's a list. We're gonna get long here.
Yeah, that's okay.
So the newest diagnoses right now are hypermobile Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. I was also recently diagnosed at the end of last year with fibromyalgia, and we are on the diagnostic path for celiac disease. We've got the blood test results, but now you got to do like all the funky endoscopy and camera stuff.
Yep.
So that's the chronic illness category. I'm also diagnosed with ADHD, autism, PTSD, depression, anxiety, the whole shebang.
Yeah, I talk to so many people and it seems to be like a hand-in-hand thing because I'm not diagnosed with any neurodivergent things, but that's because I'm too cheap to go to a psychologist to get diagnosed.
My gosh, it's so expensive. My psychologist from back in Texas, we're still in touch because we worked together for quite a while. He was telling me when I got diagnosed with Ehlers-Danlos, he was like, yeah, that tracks. That's not uncommon. It's actually, amongst the autistics, it's pretty frequently seen, despite the fact that it's a rare disease in the general population.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I've always thought there was like a bit of a link between a bunch of chronic illnesses and neurodivergence, but
it makes sense.
I'm not a scientist. I can't prove anything. I just talk to a lot of people and there seems to be a lot of commonality there.
Oh yeah, absolutely. You start to put the puzzle pieces together like, this seems like more than a coincidence.
Yeah. So tell me about the diagnostic process for you for everything. Like,
okay, so it was
doctors?
Long.
Yeah.
So I was a pretty sickly child. So I went through quite a few doctors when I was a kid trying to figure out what was going on. And of course, this was before Ehlers-Danlos sort of made it to the forefront, and things like mast cell activation syndrome were even actually like codified as a diagnosis. So they kind of did a few things, kind of threw their hands up and were like, we don't know what's wrong with you. Good luck. And they were like, yeah, you'll probably just grow out of it. It'll be fine. But I continued to have issues all throughout my life, and I just kind of did my best to cope with them as I could. Lots of sleeping, lots of restful weekends. I was not the most I wasn't in sports. I was like a super big nerd in high school. So, I had no interest in sports anyway.
Same.
And then I think I tried to start working on that diagnostic process again when I was in my early 20s. I'm 26 now for reference. And again, kind of threw their hands up and they were like, we don't really know what's wrong with you, but like, you're pretty young still, so you probably still grow out of it. I hit 25 and my condition started to worsen really rapidly, which I've heard from a lot of EDS people. It's like you hit 25 and it's like you hit this wall. And a lot of people noticed that they deteriorated really quickly at that time. And that's exactly what happened to me. And so I was like, I'm 25, I've stopped growing. Clearly this is not something I'm going to grow out of. We got to figure out what's going on here because it's really affecting the quality of life. So I went through my PCP. My PCP was like, yeah, something's wrong. We need to figure this out. So she referred me out to infectious disease. I got a million blood tests done. Infectious disease was like, well, we don't think it's our wheelhouse, maybe rheumatology. So I went to rheumatology. Rheumatology did blood tests, urine samples again. And they were like, well, you're hypermobile and you seem to have fibromyalgia, but the other stuff we're not really sure about. Good luck. No further referrals. So I started doing all this research on my own. I was like, this doesn't answer all of the problems. So I kind of became my own medical researcher. I have read so much research. I've read so many accounts of like people with EDS. I was on like EDS TikTok. I was on Fibro TikTok. I was like following all of these different people. I mean, you're the reason I actually even found out about fibromyalgia. Funnily enough. Yeah, I know. You're the reason I found out. So it's like really cool to actually meet you.
Well, I'm sorry because it all sucks, but
I mean, it's nice to know what it is. It's very isolating to not know what's going on. And then to have a name for it, like, it's very scary. I mean, there's a difference between suspecting you have this thing and then actually finding out. Like, the grief is overwhelming, but it also opens up this whole new community of people that you can reach out to, that you can get support from, that you can learn from. And so in doing all of this research, I started pinning down things. I was like, okay, I think this might be in my diagnosis. I think this might be going on. I think this might be going on. So I started finding a specialist that handled EDS. And I went to her and she was like, definitely sounds like EDS. Let's do the genetic testing. We did. We got diagnosed with hypermobile EDS. Here we are. And now I have many, many more diagnostic appointments coming up to try and nail down all of the fun little comorbidities.
Yeah, that sounds about right. In like the very beginning stages of getting tested for EDS, because for 10 years they were like, no, you have a bad back, you've had surgeries on your spine, it's chronic pain. I'm like, maybe a little, but there's a lot happening. And then I got a fibromyalgia diagnosis like 2.5 years ago. And now my doctor's like, I think it might be EDS. And I'm like, oh, cool.
I've heard that from a lot of people, that they started out with fibro and they were like, this isn't really cutting it. Like, something else is going on underneath this. Like, sure, I might have this chronic pain condition, but like, it's as a result of something. And so I've heard that from lots of EDS people, that they got fibro first and then they figured out EDS later.
Yeah, well, I was talking to one of my friends and she was like, I have watched your elbows literally bend backwards. I have Ehlers-Danlos. Have you looked into that instead of fibromyalgia? I'm like, oh, no, because right backwards, like that.
Which, yeah. That and
I was a kid.
And the sublux is the constant popping of the joint.
Yeah,
it's like, it's more than just a pop.
In my jaw.
It's like you feel it like kind of come out and you're like, uh-oh, that's not good.
Yeah, that happened to my jaw during fun times with my husband. And I'm like,
oh my gosh, you know what? I've been there. I've been there. I've had to like, we need like a timeout real quick because I gotta like pop this back into place. Something.
Sorry.
Just a sec. We'll be right back.
So at this point, my daughter had come in to ask to play on my phone, and she had just done like a pouty walk away, and we were just talking and laughing about it. And we started talking about how my daughter, who has ADHD and is in the testing stages for autism, once she gets an idea in her head, she needs to do it like right then, and it doesn't matter what anyone else is doing. And that's where we kind of jump back into this conversation about chronic illnesses.
Yeah, it's actually sort of a thing that reminds me of chronic illness. It's like when you get that wind of energy, that second wind come in, like you got to do it right then because that is not going to last.
Oh, yeah,
I will like do so many dishes
right now.
Like, right. Yeah. Oh my gosh. I do so much cleaning like that. And people, ask me, they're like, are you like manic or something? And I'm like, no, I have energy right this second. And we gotta get everything done right now.
Oh my gosh. I did that the other day. My husband and I, in our bedroom, I slept on one side of the bed and he slept on the other, but it wasn't working for me to organize. And I just threw my stuff everywhere. So we were going to switch closets and switch sides of the bed so I could organize my stuff more easily. And he went to drive kids to school in the morning and I started doing it because he was going to be coming home. And he calls and he's like, I'm not going to come home. I have to go do blood tests. I have doctor's appointments. I'm just going to stay here until I pick kids up from school. And I'm like, I have already started. And he's like, what? Like, no, like, you don't understand. Like, I have my closet entirely cleared out and I'm putting your stuff in. This train is left. I'm doing it how I'm going to do it now. And you have no choice but to just deal with it.
You're really just along for the ride at this point.
Yeah, you can figure out organization or whatever later, but I'm just gonna do this all today. And then the next day I couldn't move.
Yep, that sounds about right. That tracks. I do the same exact thing. And you would think by now I would have learned maybe like not to just go hog wild. But I don't seem to have learned that lesson. So I just still go hog wild, go ham.
Yeah. I've tried the whole saving your spoons thing and all that, and they just go away. If I don't use them, they like expire.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. They definitely just like expire. Like you have 24 hours to use the spoons. And if you don't use the spoons, they're gone. Your coupon has expired.
And I know some people that aren't like that. They can like store them and then use them for a big thing, but I need to just get them out.
Yeah, no, I envy those people that can store them. Like, I wish I had spoon storage. I wish I had like a whole drawer that I could just pull spoons from or put them away.
Mine are totally random. Like I can do something the entire day and then the next day I'll still be fine and I'll still have spoons. But other days I'll do like one thing and I'm done for 2 days.
Yeah. So. Yeah. It depends on the day. It depends on your pain levels. It depends on how you slept that night. It depends on like what you ate for dinner 3 days ago.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I'm sleeping like shit right now because the little one that keeps coming in here, she's been coming and sleeping in our bed every night for the last like 2 weeks, and I will never stop her because she's 7, and I just don't have that. She's the youngest. I don't have much long left that she's gonna want to do that, but I don't sleep.
It's like, I love you and I want to do this with you because you're going to grow up soon and you're not going to want to snuggle with me in bed every night. But also, I would love to sleep.
Yeah. I know our oldest is 13 and she's mean. And then we have 2 10-year-olds that are like getting there. And I'm like, no, I just miss all the sweet little kids. But I guess
that's all right. Maybe when they grow up, they'll get snuggly again because I'm super snuggly with my mom. I may be 26, but nothing beats like head pets from your mom, honestly.
That actually sounds really nice. My mom like hugs tentatively, but she's never been much for like physical.
Oh my gosh.
Brain
every time I go home to Texas to visit my parents, I immediately I walk in and I'm like, Mom, can I have head pets? Like at night when we're watching TV before bed, I'm like, Mom, can I come put my head in your lap? She never tells me no, though. She always says it's fine.
Older. Okay, so walk me through like a day in your life. Like, what does it look like? A good day and a bad day.
All right, let's start with a good day. Let's have the fun stuff. So an average good day for me, I am a boring like 9 to 5 pencil pusher. So I get up, I moved actually to be living across the street from my job. So my commute is all of like 2 minutes. Which is very convenient, very nice. I don't really like commuting. So I get up about 7 o'clock in the morning and like first thing I do is I am blind as a bat. So I have to put my contacts on and I go through the general morning hygiene, wash your face, wash, your hands, wash your hair, all that. And get myself dressed and ready to go. And about that time, my service dog is bothering me for breakfast. So he gets fed, I feed myself, we go out for walkies. And in the mornings and the evening, he gets sniffy walks. So as far as I am able to walk that day, I will take him to walk and he gets to like sniff everything. So he gets to be like free to do sort of his own thing. Because, I feel bad. He crates a lot. He doesn't always come to work with me. So he crates a lot. So I feel bad for him. So I'm like, you should get your sniffies in. And then I usually come home, have a cup of coffee, relax, like try to get my brain centered for the day. Go do my 9 to 5, come home. And unfortunately, by the time I'm done with my 9 to 5, I usually don't have a ton of energy. So, Barley goes for his evening constitutional and I come home, make us dinner. And usually he's very, very cuddly. He's actually right next to me cuddling. He's very, very cuddly. And so when I get home at night, he's actually not really in the mood to play. He's usually in the mood to join me in bed.
Puppy.
Yeah, this is Barley. He's ready to join me in bed. So I basically just kind of pat my thigh and say, cuddles, bedtime. And So I go put on a TV show and we'll just cuddle, and he makes me feel so, so much better. Like, I think my pain levels would actually be a lot worse if I didn't have him. I mean, he likes to be the big spoon sometimes. Like, he's got a big personality.
That's so sweet. Animals
Um,
are, I love them. We have 3 cats and 2 dogs and 4 kids who are kind of like animals, but I always wanted just a house filled with animals. And I
I
think
know.
like,
I see like any animal that's like on a rescue website or something. And I'm like, oh, I want to adopt that dog and that dog and that cat and
yeah,
like that goat that somehow ended up at that rescue.
I love goats. They're my favorite.
I love goats. They're just weird dogs.
Yeah. Oh, I would have so many animals, but we live in like the middle of suburbia or whatever it's called. The suburbs. We live in the
Yeah.
suburbs, and
I wouldn't have anywhere to
have
keep a
chickens.
goat on my balcony.
Yeah, maybe.
Maybe. So somewhere along in all of that, of course, is my cat Nimbus running around doing her own thing. But she, once lights go out and it's, about 9 or 10 o'clock, she comes in and joins us and sleeps with us at night. So that's a good day. That's an average good day. On a bad day, if I'm lucky, I can still go to work. A lot of times I either end up having to call out or work from home. I'm really, really lucky that I have a job where I can just be like, I'm not feeling well today, guys. I'm going to work from home, and it's no big deal. So I'm really, really thankful for that. Bad days are usually bed days, basically. I have a weighted blanket on my bed, and I pretty much just like cower under that. That helps definitely with the chronic pain. And I eat a lot of comfort food. I'll eat a lot of carbs when I don't feel good. I'm a carb loader. And you know what? At this point, I'm like, if you can eat something when you don't feel good, you can have whatever you want. If you want to eat French fries all day, you know what? Do it. Because there's a lot of bad days where I can't really eat. And so whatever craving I might have at the time, I just indulge it at this point. And I found that works a lot better because it means I actually eat more on my bad days than if I just like, I'm like, no, I gotta eat vegetables and I gotta eat healthy and stuff. I'm like, I save that for my good days.
It's so hard because they all involve prep too, or ordering from somewhere, and it's so much more expensive to order if that's what you're doing. And
yeah, and when you've got dietary restrictions, you've got like all of 5 options in the entire city. I think I've got like 2 right now, 2 good delivery options, and it's pizza or burgers from these places that have gluten-free. So it's just like that's not always what you want. And also it costs like $50 to have food delivered, because if you're going to get it delivered, you might as well get a bunch of it at once.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, most of my family is celiac, so I know the struggle. And
yeah,
they thought I just have sensitivity to it, so I just eat it now. But I got tested. It's okay. I'm not gonna die. That was my biggest worry, was that it still makes me feel sick.
But bread.
I love bread. I'm sorry you can't have good bread anymore.
You know what? That's not true. I make my own bread.
Oh, really?
One of the best purchases I've ever made in my entire life was my bread maker that I got when I found out I had celiac. And I've started, like, all I have to do is just throw the ingredients in there on like a Saturday morning, tell it to go. And then in like 3.5 hours, I have delicious bread.
That's awesome.
So like, that is the best chronic illness thing I've ever bought. Buy a bread maker.
That's awesome. Yeah, because I did the gluten-free thing for a bit, and it's really hard to find store-bought decent bread.
Oh gosh, it's always like crumbly or really dry. It's just generally sad, and also it's like as big as an infant's palm. Like, it's always so tiny, and so like when you make it yourself in like your bread maker, you get like a real slice of bread, which is, you don't need to eat like 4 of them to feel like you had a real slice of bread. That's very nice.
There's a gluten-free bakery 1 town over from me, and their bread's awesome, but it's also like $8 a loaf.
Yep. There's a gluten-free bakery not far from me, and so I don't buy bread from them very often unless I want something special. Like, they do like demi baguettes and stuff, and so when I want to feel fancy, I might have like a baguette. And they do cupcakes, which I've not really figured out the whole gluten-free baking thing very well yet. So I will splurge on a cupcake every now and again. And they also do bagels. Again, not really figured out the whole gluten-free bageling baking thing. So,
Yeah.
but they're like a town over, it's like 20 or 30 minutes away each direction. And so I really have to want to drive out there to do it.
Yeah, for sure. So you said you were in Texas. Where are you now?
I am in Seattle now. So I was born and raised in Texas. And then during the pandemic, I actually moved to Seattle. I graduated just before the pandemic in the spring of 2019, was having trouble finding a job. Ended up taking a year off, getting a certificate as a paralegal. And then during the pandemic, obviously finding a job was not the easiest thing in the world. So I was looking in the city close to where we lived and just it wasn't really panning out. So I thought, why don't we cast a wider net? Let's just apply all over the country and see what sticks. And so I did, and Seattle is the one that stuck. And I was like, oh, okay, I guess I'm moving to Seattle now. And so I've been here since October, the end of October 2020. So like right in the midst of winter, which was fantastic because I love the rain. So the weather here is just A plus. And the summers are really, really mild. And that was always a problem for me as a kid. I was so heat intolerant. So like 6 to 9 months out of the year in Texas, I had to like hide in my house or like go from my air conditioned house to an air conditioned car to an air conditioned other place. So it was miserable. And my parents was getting diagnosed with EDS while I was up here. We were talking, we were like, oh, we don't want to live so far apart because now you're diagnosed with these chronic illnesses. We want to be closer together. Maybe you come back to Texas. And I did come back for a visit recently and it was hot again. And I wilted like a flower. It was not good. And so they were like, okay, definitely not coming back to Texas. We'll come up to Seattle because they like it up here. It's gorgeous. I always send mom pictures of the flowers here in the spring. Or we'll be FaceTiming while I'm walking barley and I'm like flipping the camera around. I'm like, look at this pretty flower. Look at this pretty flower.
Yeah, I love Seattle. It's so nice. Because I'm just right across the border in Canada. I'm in Chilliwack, so we're like a couple hours from each other. So we have roughly the same climate, but I hate the weather here. I would do super well in like Arizona where it's just warm and dry, like hot and dry. I'm good. So
I feel like it's you're either one end of the spectrum or the other. You either like the cold and you do really well in the cold, or you like the hot and you do really, really well in the hot. But I don't think anybody seems to do well in the hot and humid. That's just that's the no zone.
Like when it was 47 degrees here last summer, that was getting a little rough. But if like when we were out at the beach and stuff, it was fine. It was when I like where my in-laws live in our basement suite and they take off on the whole summer because they own a sailboat. So we moved down into their house just because it's partially underground, and that was all we couldn't even come up to our place.
Oh my gosh. I'm so cheap. I'm like my grandfather. He was born in the Depression. This man cracks me up. I will not turn on my heater. Like my heater lives at about 60 to 65 degrees in the winter. And in the summer, I have like a portable air conditioner that's for 700 square foot, which is like about the size of my apartment. And like that's cranked like all the way down. So like I'll come in from if it's like hot outside or something and it's just like freezing cold in my apartment. Like it's too expensive for me to turn on the gas that costs like 0.00035 dollars in the winter. But like I will crank that air conditioner down, like absolutely no questions asked. Like
I crank the heat so much in the winter that my husband and I sat down to redo our budget. So I paid the entire heat because he's like, no, this is your thing. This is you. I'm not paying $300 a month for the heat when it's you. And I'm like, you know what? Fair. That's fine.
That's fair. That's fair. That's fine.
All of it.
Yeah.
I'm warm in the winter.
Yeah, I grew up with my mom, being of the mindset of, if you're cold, go put on a pair of socks or like go get a blanket or something. And I think that just translated to me moving out on my own and being like, no, it's too expensive to turn the heat on. We don't turn the heat on in this place. Like the only time I will turn the heat on is if somebody's visiting, which the only people that visit me generally are my parents, because I like to have control over when I'm done like socializing. So I so rarely invite anybody over to my apartment. Like one of the few people I will invite to my place. She lives back in Texas still, but I mean, she and I are done socializing at the exact same time. We're like, all right, it's been about an hour. Like, we're good. I love you. Like, I'll see you again later. Bye now. I'm gonna go take a nap. That's like the exception to the rule. I'm like, you have to leave in about an hour and a half. But like, you can't say that to somebody when they come into your house. You can't be like, okay, so you're coming here, but I need you to know that there's a deadline of 1.5 hours for you to get out of my house.
Wouldn't that be nice though if you could?
I know, but people think it's rude. So, you have to be like, oh yeah, you can come over and stay for however long.
Yeah, we bought our house about 2.5 years ago, and because we have 4 kids and we needed a big place, but I didn't really think that buying the big house meant that suddenly every single family gathering ever was going to be here. And it was a big adjustment because, we used to go to someone's house.
And now you're the one that everybody expects to do it at your house.
Yeah, and I'm a terrible host because I will just go have a nap in the afternoon. And my mom and mother-in-law make up for it. They're very like type A, let's do this, and they're always moving kind of people, and they understand what's going on with me, which is really nice. But it's a lot having
I am so appreciative of my parents being autistic as well. We call ourselves the Autism Family for a reason. My social battery is a lot smaller than theirs usually. But like, we have like our close family friends that would come visit us all like know that we're the Autism Family. Like, somebody's gonna go nap while you're there. And they're totally cool with it. They might be the ones that go nap. They might be like, can I go like nap? And we'll be like, absolutely, guest rooms, all yours.
Yeah, have at it.
Have at it, take a nap. And so like, they're totally cool. It's like, oh yeah, I'm gonna go nap for a while. And they're like, okay, I'm just gonna knit on the sofa for a bit. Like, come out when you're like ready. And so I'm so appreciative of my parents' friends that are like that. And I'm so appreciative of my parents too, because like, if they're visiting here, like part of me feels bad because I'm like, oh, I should take you to go do fun things and like check out the city, but also I would like a nap.
Yeah.
And so there's like almost always a nap built into the day. Like, we'll go do something fun in the morning and then come back for a nap and do like a fun little dinner thing or something.
Yeah, it's nice when you have people where you can set those boundaries and you can say, this is what I need and this is how we're going to do it. I used to have like a really good friend who we could just like, she would just come over and we would just like do our own thing. And it was like hanging out with someone and you just like weren't alone. I think it's like parallel play, right? And you just, someone's there. And I don't have that anymore. Yeah, I don't know.
Something like that, parallel play, doubling. I think different people call it different things. But yeah, I love that. I do the same thing with my parents. I may be in Seattle, but like on the weekends, we'll start a FaceTime call and it'll go for hours. Like, we're not even talking to each other. Like, we're like, you can see each other and stuff, or like we'll be all puttering around. Like, you'll see somebody kind of pass in front of the camera every so often. You'll hear somebody in the distance. Like, we're cleaning or we're like reading our book or whatever. Like, we're just sharing space basically as best we can in the distance. But we're not even talking. Like, we'll talk at the beginning and then we're like, okay, that's fun. Got to do my own thing now.
Yeah. And it makes you feel a little less alone.
Yeah, absolutely. It definitely helps with like the loneliness. And that's something that can really creep up on you with chronic illness because you just don't have as much energy to spend time with people. So you have to have people whose like energy, they can match your energy. They can deal with that, like, just sharing space kind of thing. I have so much appreciation for the people that I can do that with.
Yeah, it's nice. My husband's like that for me sometimes. He's completely neurotypical and it's kind of annoying sometimes. But he's also super understanding. Like, he works with people that have conditions so they can't take care of themselves on their own. And that's his job. And he makes jokes about how I married my job. And I'm like, haha, but it's whatever. But
you made the choice, dude. It was your, you 100% had control of over that one.
Absolutely. And we're completely in love. But it's nice because I can tell him what's going on with me. I can tell him these things and it doesn't scare him off.
Yeah, and that's amazing because so many people you really can't do that. I started using a wheelchair back in February. I walk Barley still. We're still working on the whole getting used to the wheelchair thing. It's been a bit hard for him because I don't have as much energy to train him. So we may be reaching out to like a trainer or something like that to work on that. But during the workday, getting up and down out of my chair constantly at my desk and walking across the office it was getting to be too much. My I was subluxing all these joints in my lower body all the time, and I was just tired and achy and stuff. So I decided to get a wheelchair, and I know that was a really hard transition for my parents, but like as soon as I started using it, I could tell how much of a difference it was making. But like I am the only person that is visibly chronically ill at my office. And so when I suddenly went from walking to using a wheelchair all the time at work, there was like this huge disconnect. There was this cognitive dissonance that everybody had because I was very good at masking my condition, masking my pain, masking how I felt. And so most people didn't know what I was going through at the time. And then suddenly I show up with a wheelchair. And being autistic and not a very visible autistic, being very good at masking and being able to sort of, find my place in society, I never really experienced microaggressions until I got the wheelchair. And I'd always heard of people talk about microaggressions, whether they
catch that. Could you try again?
Nobody asked you.
Is that your watch? My watch does that all the time.
Yeah, Siri, I use this. It's sort of a safety mechanism. It keeps track of my heart rate for me. And it also, has fall response. So,
that's
fall.
And
that's
I can make my phone ding when I lose it.
Yes. Oh my gosh. The number of times I have to make my phone ding because I've set it down on a couch. And my apartment is not that big, but I'll set it down and I'm just wandering around like a ditz. Like, oh, where's my phone? I just had it a second ago. The best is when I'm walking around with it in my hand and I'm like,
I've done that.
The brain fog will get you every time. Yeah. Every single time.
And I have a brown case on mine and I put it face down, like on my brown counter. And I should probably get a neon case, but I don't.
That's why I have brightly colored cases. But yeah, so I didn't start experiencing microaggressions until I got in this wheelchair, and people were like, so like, how long are you going to be in the wheelchair? What's that for? And it's a constant thing there, and I know that they don't, like, a lot of my coworkers, it's a pretty small company, so we're pretty tight knit, and I know that they mean well, but the way it comes off is like the wheelchair is the worst thing to possibly happen to me. And in my view, the wheelchair is the best thing to possibly happen to me because I can do more. I'm not like just completely exhausted and in so much pain all the time. Like I can walk Barley because I'm in the wheelchair all day long.
Yeah.
So it's a very strange thing to experience, that dissonance where suddenly you're no longer perceived as able-bodied, or you're no longer perceived the same way, and people's whole attitude changes. It's wild.
Yeah. Sorry, my husband's probably gonna be mad at me for telling the story because he doesn't look great in it. But when we were like early dating, we were going to a casino to meet some of his work friends. He was doing something there, and I had my cane with me that day because I needed it at that point. And we were about to go in and he said, do you mind not using your cane? And I'm like, why? And it was like 5 seconds. And he's like, that might be the crappiest thing I've ever said. Absolutely. No, use your cane. You need it. But he's like, I had a moment where the only thing in my head is what are my coworkers going to think about my girlfriend? Like they're just going to, and he backtracked pretty quick, and he felt bad, but that was the first thing through his head still. And I get it. It's like, it's a thing that you have to think about. And it really affects the way you're able to build relationships with other people, because you sort of have to overcome that bias frequently with people. I feel like the exception to that rule is other chronically ill people who are using, well, not necessarily, because like as a chronically ill person before I started using a wheelchair, I certainly wouldn't have thought anything of it.
But, you know, if you're not somebody that deals with pain, that deals with these chronic issues, I think it's just like an unconscious bias that just gets built in for the way that, you know, media interacts with disabled bodies and the way you see other people interact with disabled bodies. So like it's almost like if you're not disabled, you come off that way, and it's hard to overcome that. And I mean, even when you go from being quote unquote able-bodied, because I don't think I ever really was truly able-bodied, but passing as able-bodied and thinking of myself that way, there's still a lot to unpack there when you get to that point where you're like, no, I should use a mobility aid. It would be helpful. It, you know, it would reduce my pain. It would reduce my symptoms. You still kind of have to go through a period to unpack all of your own ableist tendencies. And I mean, I feel like I'm still unpacking my own ableist tendencies, even to this day.
Oh, I think it's a constant struggle with everything.
Yeah,
I was 23 or 24 when I hurt my spine, and it was between hurting it and my first surgery was about a year and a half. And I don't think one single person believed, like my family, my friends, people that were close to me believed how bad it was until a doctor said, oh, emergency surgery, let's go. And I was in surgery, but I don't think anyone believed me. I don't think they thought I was fully faking, but I don't think they believed that it was as bad as it was.
Well, I mean, pain is so invisible in so many ways. Yeah. Pain is so invisible. So Thank you. I've had him since he was 8 weeks old. He's the love of my life. But yeah, it's so frequently invisible that it's hard for people to quantify it, which is, I think, how so many people understand these sorts of things, is they need to quantify it. And you really can't understand it in a way that's not qualitative. You can't quantify pain, because, you know, the other thing is that my 8 might be your 5 or your 6, you know, so it's so subjective. And I think that that's hard to understand for people that haven't truly experienced it. I know my parents really struggled at the beginning of my using a wheelchair, and now they're super supportive. They're like, you need to get a custom wheelchair because your wheelchair is too heavy and it's too hard for you to deal with. But at the first point, like, they did have a little trouble with it. They weren't really sure if I really truly needed it, I think. And I don't know if they really realized how that came off to me. And so I was really worried about using it in front of them, because I was like, well, I don't want to make my parents uncomfortable. And then it was like that ableist brain kicked in. It was like, I don't want to use it in front of my parents and make my parents uncomfortable. But then I had to check myself and go, it doesn't matter if they're uncomfortable, because if I don't use it, I'm going to be uncomfortable.
Exactly. And well, I just went through the same thing kind of with my son, who he sprained his ankle riding his bike. And, you know, someone who was there was like, what's the pain? 1 to 10, what's the pain? He's screaming 10. And I'm like, it's a sprained ankle. That's not a 10, but it's his 10. And it was, but because of that, my brain went, oh, he's obviously lying about his pain, because it's a sprained ankle is not a 10. That's like barely even a 5, but for him it is.
Right. And for us, it's not, because we deal with so much other pain, but that's a new experience for him.
Yeah. It was the worst he's ever been injured. And like, that's his 10. My 10 is my back pain and like childbirth, which
right. You know,
and like what I walk around with every day is probably a solid 6 or 7 for me, but that would debilitate someone who's not used to it.
Right, exactly. I mean, like, you know, when you first start out, your pain is very debilitating. It's almost like you get desensitized to it. So now what was an 8 for us is, that's an average like 4 for me, you know?
Yeah, like, oh, I'm functioning. I can move. That's a good day.
Right. Yeah. So it's so subjective. And I think that's also what makes it so hard for people that don't experience it to understand, is that as you go through, that desensitization happens, and then, you know, your pain tolerance changes. I had a really high pain tolerance as a kid. I remember my mom always said that, like, whenever I told her that something hurt, she knew that it was serious, because I never complained about pain. And so she always knew to take me seriously if I really did complain about something hurting. And I think that really kind of tracks today, even because I mean, like, I'll kind of mention offhand, like, my hip's hurting today. That's annoying, but it's a day that's like a 5,
Yeah.
But like, if I tell my mom, like, my hip's like killing me today, like it's really bothering me, like, she knows that I'm at like, an 8 or a 9 at that point, and that I definitely need to not walk anywhere, and that I should probably be like resting, staying at home, not moving. So, the people in your life that care about you will sort of adjust themselves and adjust their own thinking. And that's, I hate to say it, but like, that's how you know who your real friends are, is who's willing to adjust their thinking, and who's willing to, adapt and help you overcome these things and help you still have a life and do fun things, but like on your terms. And not just on there, like, well, I want to do all these things today. I want to go out and go to the zoo and go to the aquarium and have lunch at this cool little cafe. Like,
sounds awesome. Over like 4 days. That's like 4 days
right.
of stuff.
Yeah. But like, I have done one activity today. Please wait 5 to 7 business days before requesting another activity.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I went like paddling on a lake and skating with my kids in the same day. And like halfway through skating, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm going to die. I can't even move. This was the worst idea I've ever had in my life. But,
yeah.
One activity per day, if that.
I will say this for one of my ex-boyfriends. I was not diagnosed at the time, but he knew that my energy levels were really low. And so really one of the things that we did most of the time was we would hang out, we would watch movies. One of the things we did together was we started reading a book series together, which were all quiet activities. And then like occasionally we would plan something to go out. Like we were both super into fountain pens. And so like I found out about this fountain pen show by listening to NPR. Love NPR. Thank you for turning me on to like weird stuff. Thank you. And I found out about it happening in Dallas. And I was like, hey, this weekend, like this thing is happening. And I know we're super interested in it. Do you want to go for a couple of hours? And we did. We went, we explored a little bit. And about the time I was wearing out, like he could tell, he was like, you're about ready to go home, aren't you? And I was like, yeah, I'm kind of done. And so we did. And like, it was never a problem for him. Like when my energy tapped out. Yeah. I mean, he was like this super type A. He loved to go clubbing. He loved to like go out at night. He was from Mexico. He'd grown up there. And so like he'd go to Guanajuato, and like that's like party town. And so he'd like go clubbing all night and go drinking with his friends, and they would like go for this whole weekend. And like he'd come back and he's like, yeah, I feel really good. I feel really fresh. Like I'm kind of tired, but I had a really fun time. And I was like, I would literally be dead. Like I would not survive that weekend. Oh gosh, and so that's one of the things he would tell me when he was going to go do these things, but he never invited me because he knew I didn't want to go or that I couldn't handle going. But if I ever expressed any interest in something that he was doing, it was always an open invitation. It was like, I might like to try and go do like something fun, like go out to the bar together. And so he's like, yeah, let's do it. But we'll do it for only an hour. Yeah. And he never made me feel bad about having to go home. And so like, I love him for that.
Yeah, that's great. I can't imagine doing that though. Oh my God, we did Vegas a couple years ago, and it took 4 days to recover from coming back. Like, and I spent as much time like in the hotel as I possibly could. But
yeah, I remember when I was in high school, I went to national competitions for this thing called Technology Student Association. And we were in Florida for like a week, and everybody wanted to go do stuff like, they wanted to go play mini golf, and everybody wanted to go down to the swimming pool all day long and run around. And just like anytime our chaperones would take us out, everybody was like, let's do it. And I remember after I got back, I was so tired. And like the other downside was I had to have a roommate with like people that I didn't know, which was never my thing. I don't really do roommates. And so I was like having to figure out how to like deal with the fact that I needed to go to sleep at like, 8 or 9 o'clock, and they would stay up till, 11 midnight, 1, some odd in the morning. I don't do that. Like I go to bed at grandma time. I am in bed at like 7 o'clock. My lights are out at 8.
Oh God, I wish.
You know, it's the upside to being like a young single professional is like I make my own bedtime. You know, I'm not tied down to like children needing to go to bed and like,
No,
you know, I live by myself. I don't have a partner. So, you know, I don't have anybody else to like judge my, you know, for me to like have to alter my schedule around.
My husband went away for a week and I was in bed at 8:30 every night. Like I put the kids to bed and I went to bed and it was great. I loved it.
Gosh, I can only imagine. Yeah, that would have been great. I remember recently a girl I was seeing, you know, I went to bed before she did. She could not go to bed early, which was understandable because she worked sort of this late night, like almost night shift. Like she would get off at like 8:30 at night. And so on the weekends, she still didn't want to go to bed that early because it would throw off her whole schedule. So when I was visiting with her, at one point, like I would go to bed. She knew I was like, she would feed me. And then she was like, knew that I would go to bed really, really early. And then she would just come join me, or like she'd come get in bed with me, and just like watch TV or something. Cause I would be knocked out. You know, I'd take my meds and I would be gone with the wind.
Yeah, we compromise. My husband's like a 1 to 2 a.m. going to bed, or even though he gets up early for work, and I'm like an 8:30. So we go to bed around like 10 or 11. Most times. Sometimes I go earlier, but
I love my parents' way of doing things because like they will, you know, cuddle together and like get in bed together like in the morning, or they'll sometimes sleep together, but they have 2 separate bedrooms. This started out because they're both insomniacs and like they might want to like just get up and read or something, but they didn't want to disturb the other person. Or my dad snores really loudly, so sometimes that would just keep my mom up. So they started doing 2 separate bedrooms and it's worked beautifully for them. And so like that's always something that's in the back of my mind. Like I love having my own bed, my own space. And so I'm always like, okay, potential partner needs to like, I need to screen them. Like, how do they feel about having 2 separate bedrooms so that I can sleep comfortably and spread out the way that I need to, or like toss and turn all the time because I'm in pain. You know, like that's like a screening question I have, like for partners or people that I'm going on dates with. I'm like, how do you feel about 2 separate bedrooms? And are you willing to like consider that? It's like, if they're not, I'm like, all right, well, this was fun. I loved meeting you, but this is definitely not going to work out.
Yeah, that sounds awesome, to be honest, because I sleep on the couch a few times a month because my husband snores too loud. And if I don't fall asleep first, I can't fall asleep in the same bed as him. I can sleep through it, but I need to be already sleeping when he starts. So I'll come and sleep on the couch or whatever, but I would not hate having a guest room where I earn a room for me, just like go and
yeah. It used to be that my mom lived in the guest room, but since I moved out, she actually lives in like my old room is her room now. So like when I come to visit, she gets kicked out of my room and I sleep in there, and then she has to sleep with my dad for a couple nights, which doesn't seem to bother them that much. But like it's definitely consideration with my parents moving up here, since like we kind of want to get a place together, maybe like a split level, or like one of those things where you kind of have like separate spaces but you're still together. Because also I'm young, and the only way I'm ever going to be able to afford a house apparently in this economy is to go in with my parents.
I got a huge inheritance, and his parents bought into our house so they could live in the basement. That's it.
Yeah.
That's
so
like, it all happened and we're like, okay, we're going to buy, but we had no intention of buying a house because I can't save up a down payment.
Right. Like, exactly. And so like, you know, that's a consideration. I'm like, okay, my parents need 2 separate bedrooms, and like I definitely need my own room, and maybe we need like a separate bedroom for guests to come, / like maybe if I ever have a life partner, that's their bedroom, you know. So I'm like doing all this math. I'm like, okay, how many bedrooms do we need for everybody? Craft needs to be satisfied. Like we need a separate garage for my dad to do his woodworking in. Like it's like this whole thing.
Oh my gosh, that sounds like my house. Our entire garage is a wood shop for my husband and I. And I'm just never going to get to park my car in a garage, which in the winter makes me really sad. But
I think my mom has resigned herself to the fact that she will never be able to park her car in a garage. because my dad has been a wood carver my whole life. I used to sit and watch him for forever. I just sit on a stool and like stare at him. And like somewhere in his garage exists this little block of wood that has sloppily written the date and I think my initials in Sharpie and like a gouge from a chisel out of it and a nail very poorly like crookedly put in it because I begged my dad. I was like, I want to learn how to woodwork too. I want to work on wood. He's like, here's a block, here's a hammer, here's a nail, go to town.
Yep.
And I did. I was such a happy camper. But you know, that's like a consideration you have to make is it's like it's not just the chronically ill people you have to consider when you're making housing arrangements, you know. It's like, sure, I have needs, but I also need to be considerate of other people.
Yeah. I know. I feel one of the times I feel like the guiltiest is when I'm on my couch and I'm stuck on my couch because if my husband's not home and we have 4 kids here, I can't be in the bedroom. I need to be able to like at least be in some sort of central part of the house, but that takes the TV away from them because we only have one TV. I don't like TVs in bedrooms and all that kind of stuff. So I basically steal the TV from them all day. And every once in a while they'll like want to come in and watch a movie, but they don't. The older ones at least don't want to hang out with me for the most part, especially when I'm on the couch going, oh, every time I move.
Well, if it makes you feel better, I don't even have a television because I'm like, what's the point? I can't see a television very well if it's too far away from me. So I always end up watching things on my laptop or my phone. And also I want to have control about like where I am. Like, do I want to be on my couch? Do I want to be in my bed? You know, and I don't want a TV in the bedroom. I grew up in a no TVs in the bedroom kind of house myself. And so I haven't even bothered to buy a TV. Like people asked me about like when I moved in, they're like, oh, are you going to buy a TV and stuff? Like, you know, you said you didn't have one. I was like, no, why would I buy a TV? I have a perfectly good laptop.
Yeah. If I didn't have kids, I wouldn't have a TV. There's no reason for one. Like everything streams. It's not like you need anything else. So do you have any advice for someone who's like getting newly diagnosed or that's in the process or?
I think my biggest like couple of things of advice would be like, don't be afraid to advocate for yourself. Like doctors will tell you all the time, like, oh, you don't need that testing or like, oh, that's a bit extreme or like, I don't think you've got that. Like, don't be afraid. Like, I get that they've got an 8-year medical degree and like you feel very underqualified compared to them, but your doctor is not in your brain or your body. So if you feel like, you know, you're not getting the testing or the care that you need, either advocate for yourself so hard, just tell your doctor, like, no, that's not going to work. I need this. Or find yourself a new doctor. I've been known to do that. I've been like, all right, like, bye, I'm out. And then my other thing I would tell them is that like, I know how isolating it feels until you have a label for it. Like everybody tells you, don't put labels on yourself, blah, blah, blah. No, labels feel so good. And it feels so validating to know that there's a name for this mysterious thing that's been going on with you. And you'll be able to find community through so many different people, so many different channels, be that TikTok, be it Twitter, Tumblr, Facebook, whatever, wherever you do your social media thing, or even like a support group that your doctor tells you about. Like, you're not isolated, and that feeling of isolation will not last. And the grief that comes, when you get that diagnosis, when it's confirmed, it's like, oh my God, I really am sick. It'll pass. And then you'll get to this place where you're like, you're part of this community and you're able to like also say to other people, like, it doesn't last forever. You will get to a better, happier place. Like, just keep on moving. Like, I know that there are days when you do not want to like wake up and get out of your bed, and that's okay. Don't get out of your bed. That's fine. But like, that won't last forever. You will always have good days and bad days, but there will always be good days coming.
I love that. That was awesome.
Yeah.
I like the whole label thing is totally true, and while it doesn't necessarily matter, it's nice to have something tangible to hold on to.
Yeah.
And to say, look, I actually have a thing. I'm not just lazy. I'm not just crazy. I'm not.
Yeah. My first tattoo on my shoulder was a barcode that I translated myself. from English to a barcode language. It's a bunch of different languages, but and if you were to scan it and translate it, it reads no labels. And I got this after I got my autism diagnosis, and I started hearing a lot of like can'ts, don'ts, shouldn'ts, etc. And so I just decided, like, sort of the irony of it is like it's a label, but I said no labels, and it's really, for me, no labels except the ones I choose for myself.
Yeah, I like that. I really, really enjoyed talking to you today.
It was really so cool to meet you, the person like that turned me on to fibromyalgia. like when I saw your video about like, oh, I'm interviewing people for my podcast, I was like, oh my God, I could like speak to her in real life. What the heck? And so like I immediately like was like pulling up your website and like sending you a message, and then you emailed me back so quickly, and I was like, oh my God, she knows I exist. So like it was like my celebrity moment.
That's
I don't
all
really care.
ridiculous.
I don't really care about celebrities that much, but like that was my celebrity moment. I was like, oh my God, this is happening. This is real. I'm going to get interviewed by this woman that like turned me on to fibromyalgia. Like, what the heck? This is amazing. And so like, this is the highlight of my week, obviously. This is probably the highlight of my year. Let's be real.
Well, I'm going to come down to Seattle at some point, and I'll message you before I come, and we can go have coffee.
Absolutely. I would love to do that. That would be so cool.
Once the borders open back up again.
Right. When you're allowed to cross borders.
Yeah. Without paying for like expensive tests and stuff. But that's one of the first, my husband and I went down to Seattle just the November before COVID. And we just went down and spent a night, and it was awesome because it's not too far, but it's away. It's a different country.
What is it? It's like 3 hours or something like that.
Yeah, it's about 3 hours.
Yeah,
that's not too bad.
And I've wanted to come to Canada, but the borders were closed, or you had to like have a COVID test immediately. I was like, okay, that's more trouble than I want to go to. Yeah. We're just gonna wait till COVID's over enough that we're not worried about border crossing.
Yeah. Okay. No, I'm almost done.
All right, go take care of your little ones. It was so nice to meet you, and I hope we get a chance to hang out if you guys come down to Seattle again.
Absolutely.
Bye, small one. Bye, little wee. Bye.
Gator. Talia, but Gator.
Hi, Gator. It's nice to meet you.
Bye. It was really nice talking to you. Have a great day.
Yeah, you too. Bye.
Bye. That was such an awesome experience getting to talk to Savannah. I enjoyed it so much, and 100% serious. When I come down to Seattle, or if you come up to Canada, let's hang out. And once again, this is an independent podcast. I do all the work myself, and it is a lot. So if you would like to support us, please go to our Patreon or Acast, both of which have links through our website, which is www.chronicallyjill.ca. And it's as little as $2 a month. You get access to early episodes, ad-free content, and a lot more. If that's not your thing, totally cool. Just listening, sharing, and subscribing to our podcast wherever you listen to podcasts is just amazing. And I really hope that I get to keep doing this for a long time because I love it. So I hope you all are having an absolutely fantastic day. Lots of love and gentle hugs.